The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS for this very special day, and I'm joined by my wonderful friend, wonderful partner in time, and someone celebrating the 46th President of the United States, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am doing great, Charles. I want to give a shout out to you in front of all of our audience. You're recording 30 minutes early,
Yes,
so that we can get in time for us to watch the celebration tonight. And I'm also you're putting up with seasickness because I am recording in my bedroom,
motion
and I
sickness,
keep and I keep moving around, and I'm just like,
unless you're on a boat or something.
Yes, exactly. But we always like having the camera on. So yes,
Yeah.
It is Inauguration Day. We are excited about new beginnings, and we have a fun episode to talk about today.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So here at episode 215, we're going to be talking the Faceless Ones. And very interesting. I probably should have picked a Tom Baker story because, hey, today's Tom Baker's birthday. So happy birthday, Doctor.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. By the way, if we were doing Ghostwood, it's also David Lynch's birthday today. So.
Oh, very nice.
He turned 75. So a pretty big day all around. I mean, you got a couple big birthdays and, oh, hey, we have a new president of the United States. No
Absolutely.
big deal. And the restoration of democracy. Hooray. All right.
Yes.
So, yes, needless to say, I'm in a really good mood. I think Jesse's in a good mood.
I am in a great mood.
He should be in a great mood because he's probably going to get Bruce Springsteen later tonight. So, which is why we're recording early.
Yes, it is.
Let's be honest. All right. So, the Faceless Ones. This is a story that, obviously from the Patrick Troughton era, that partially has been lost in time. Only episodes 1 and 3 survive. It was recently restored through the recent, kind of low-budget animation that they've been doing, the more cost-effective animation, I should say. And thankfully, it was released in 2020 and finally have a complete story. So this is one of the things on my to-do list that I wanted to get to as soon as possible when I was making the new schedule. So this story, written by David Ellis and Malcolm Hulke, or as I like to call him, the incredible Malcolm Hulke, who wrote a bunch of notable stories from the Patrick Troughton and Jon Pertwee eras, including, the War Games, Patrick Troughton's final story, the Silurians, the first appearance of the Silurians, the Ambassadors of Death, which was a really cool story that we talked about here, and also the Sea Devils, a fun story with the Master that we haven't talked yet. So that's one of those that hopefully we'll get to at some point here on Next Stop. This was directed by Jerry Mill. This was the 8th serial of Doctor Who Season 4, 1967, starring Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor, Annika Wills as Polly Wright, Michael Craze as Ben Jackson, and this is Ben and Polly's last story, by the way, and Fraser Hines as Jamie McCrimmon, who at the end of the story gets a promotion to main companion after Ben and Polly exit the TARDIS, closing out the William Hartnell era once and for all. So, Jesse, I know that this is probably your first time watching the story, I'm guessing.
Yes,
and,
it
and,
was.
And I'm dying to know your thoughts about it.
So, I have a couple questions that
Sure.
we'll get to that I assume you're going to cover in trivia, but just in case you want.
Yeah.
So I settled down to watch this. Linda was spending the night with her sister, kind of in a mini birthday celebration. And so I watched the first
Well, happy
three.
birthday, Linda.
Yes, I watched the first 3 on Friday night, and then I watched the remaining 3 on Saturday. And I enjoyed the last 3 a lot more than I did the first 3. Now, I think part of that may have been I was a little tired. It was the end of the day. But I also think the first 3 were a lot of setup.
Yeah.
And then once the next 3, you got really a lot of the story and was really well done. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this one. I'm glad we got to see it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to talking to you about it. But my question is, and you've probably covered this before, but I have slept since then. Yeah. Why was so much of Patrick Troughton's episodes lost, and specifically about this one?
Well, there was a purge by the BBC to essentially make space, as I understand it. And in the process, they junked a bunch of old Doctor Who's. They didn't think they needed them anymore in their infinite stupidity.
Okay.
And a lot of them were episodes from the William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton eras. There was Ian Levine and some others had managed to recover some of those. And over time, because this was, I believe, done in the 70s. And since then, there's been a lot of effort by a lot of fans to try and recover episodes which have either been somehow scattered to the winds across the entire globe or just plain lost. And this story, they'd only managed to recover episodes 1 and 3 that are returned to the BBC archives because, hey, now they want to keep them.
What I find interesting, Charles, is the 70s, relatively speaking, I mean, I Love Lucy had been in syndication, so you think people would have realized the value, and the importance. And also, I know that they talked about that many of the early Tonight Show episodes back with Johnny Carson, the same thing. They just they didn't keep them. They did, because they didn't think they're important. And I remember years ago I talked to someone and he was British and he's like, yeah, Doctor Who, it's just the minor kid show.
Yeah. I'm sure that was the studio executive thinking. The super geniuses, as in Wile E. Coyote super geniuses.
Yes, exactly.
Who made this horrible decision probably thought, well, it's just a kid show. Doesn't matter. They won't miss it.
We've already done, because back in the day, dear listeners, you used to have summer reruns, and so you would show an episode twice, and then it was kind of done. So I'm sure they were thinking, okay, we've already had our repeat, time to move on. Yeah,
it was just a really bad, unfortunate thing that happened to the show because, like a lot of classic moments are just now lost. And presumably a lot of these are never going to be available in their original format. Now they're going to be like stories like this that'll probably be reconstructed through animation or maybe whatever happens in the next 10 years technology-wise, that they could be recreated somehow.
And I guess they had audio, right? So somehow the audio, either fans had the audio or someone, and so that's one of the first steps of recreating it.
Yeah, thankfully, now the upside that I should mention was that through the efforts of fans, a lot of fans at home, they had their home tape cassette recorders.
Right.
Or whatever, recording reel devices, that they managed to record on. So some of them were audio files. So they recorded the audio by, just recording the audio from the television. And thankfully, they did that for all the episodes. So all the missing episodes, the audio still exists. It's just the video that we lack.
Okay.
It's great that we at least have the audio, and I've listened to a lot of the audios just on standing alone. But thankfully, the BBC is now funding efforts to reconstruct these missing stories through using that saved audio.
And so, just so you'll know,
so this is the original audio. Bottom line.
Now you own the discs, right?
Yes, I'm a firm believer in tangible media because with digital, you're essentially living on the whims of your service provider or streaming service. And so if a streaming service decides, well, hey, I'm going to take off the content, whatever reason they decide not to do it, you've lost that. You don't have it anymore.
Well, and exactly, right, because HBO Max, right, ended up getting Doctor Who. And so luckily I had I got HBO Max.
Right.
And you also are and I say this with affection, you're a completist,
Yes, I am.
right? Like you are a collector and you like having.
Yeah, I'm someone who, like, when in the 80s, when I first got into Doctor Who, I was recording it on VHS tapes,
Yes.
taped off of PBS stations.
Yeah.
And, eventually, the DVDs, some VHS tapes were released, not all of them.
Yeah.
But eventually, they started releasing the DVDs, and I managed to, as they were released, buy every DVD that was released. Because thankfully at the time that they were released, I was fortunate enough to have money to do so. And I know a lot of people can, and I get that.
Yeah.
I get that there are financial reasons, and some people just have to rely on the streaming services. Or iTunes, that they download iTunes.
Yes.
But if for whatever reason iTunes went belly up,
Exactly.
and the software went away, you're kind of screwed. So unless you burn them on a tangible disk or have them stored on your own drive somewhere.
Yeah. So in this case, it was available on AMC Plus.
Yes.
It was a 7-day free subscription. So I signed up for the subscription, watched it, and then checked I don't know if there's anything on AMC Plus that I necessarily want to binge a lot.
Right.
So I went in and canceled, so I got my for free. So,
you got your 7 days worth.
Yeah. The downside is it was only animated. So all 6 episodes were animated. And I remember last week.
So you weren't able to watch any of them live.
I wasn't
the live action, I'm sure.
Yeah. So and you had mentioned that the DVD or Blu-ray gave you that option. You could watch it all animated, or you could mix in with the original footage with everything.
And that's what I did. I watched episode 1, then I watched the second episode animated, then the third one, and 4 through 6 were animated.
Yeah.
So that's the way I was able to watch it. So you're coming in from a standpoint of watching only the animation.
Exactly.
That's a good distinction. All right. So I'll try and keep that in mind. But overall, before we get into our guest cast and all that, so overall you enjoyed it.
I did. I liked it a lot. And, I was talking to Linda, and she said, well, did you have fun? And I go, yes. I said, you just have to get in the mindset that Classic Who is done a little different, and it wasn't built for binging. I mean, this was a weekly show.
It's a serial, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you'll watch, like when we're binging a show, it'll give you the option to skip the recap because you just watched the episode before.
Right.
Do you necessarily need the recap?
Or fast forward through it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I told her, no, it is. It's a very different style. And I said the exact thing they did. I said the second half was amazingly well done. You're just wondering. But I said, this is, I say all the time, right, that you're filling content, and you may have only needed 4 episodes to tell the story, but you have a whole season to fill.
Yes. And those seasons ran a lot longer back then than they do now, obviously. So they had to so a lot of stories like this one probably could have been told better had it been a 4-parter instead of a 6-parter.
Yeah.
But I still think there's enough going on in this 6-parter. It's not a dull 6-parter by any means.
No, not at all.
There's a lot of intrigue, and there's some comedic moments, especially with the Doctor and the Commandant. And and we'll talk about that, but but I think overall, I think it's not a poorly paced story.
No,
especially for 1967.
Exactly, and this is I picture like a hockey stick. It levels and then starts shooting up.
Yeah.
And so
this one builds. It's a little bit of a slow build.
Yes.
Those first couple episodes, but it did it. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of characters in this one, so you kind of had to get to understand that, and then once they around episode 3, they can start playing with things, and the tension builds from there, and especially when we go out into space and things of that nature. So it really takes off after that.
Yes.
So it's probably why you enjoyed the back half more than you enjoyed the first half. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So guest cast, we had Colin Gordon as the Commandant. Now later he gets in the novelization he gets a full name, Charles Gordon, no relation. And he's notable to people like me and Zan Sprouse, who are huge fans of The Prisoner, the BBC series The Prisoner, starring Patrick McGoohan. He was notable because he played one of the villainous number twos in actually 2 episodes. He's one of the few number twos that appeared in 2 different stories. He was in the episodes A, B, and C, and The General. He was also in the original 1967 Casino Royale. And he was also in the original 1963 The Pink Panther, starring Peter Sellers, the good one. Bernard Kay played Detective Inspector Crossland, and our Scottish detective inspector from Scotland Yard, who sounds like he would have been fit in really well during the Stephen Moffat era with Peter Capaldi.
Yes.
And he's notable because he played the character Carl Tyler in William Hartnell's story, The Dalek Invasion of Earth, where we said goodbye to Susan. He also played the character Saladin in The Crusade, Caldwell in Colony in Space, and Major Dickens in A Seventh Doctor, Big Finish Audio, Night Thoughts.
Oh, he's done a lot.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, so a very strong Doctor Who veteran, so I definitely wanted to mention him. You may have possibly recognized Pauline Collins as Samantha Briggs, our lass from Liverpool, because, well, decades and decades and decades later, she played Queen Victoria in the David Tennant era story Tooth and Claw.
I saw that.
So did you make the connection, or did you have to look that up?
I had to look it up, and then when I saw it, because I was interested.
So what was your reaction when you found out?
I thought that was so cool, and according to Wikipedia, which we know is never wrong,
right?
She was actually offered to be a companion.
That was one of the things in my trivia. Yeah, that she was given the chance, but turned it down. So, because it did seem it kind of seemed like they gave her a really solid introduction. That's one of the things we can talk about when we talk about her, about whether she's one of those almost companions.
Yes.
That we like to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Pickering played Blade, when the member of the Chameleons that ends up kind of turning on their leader at the end of the story. He's notable because he played the character Ison in The Keys of Marinus from the William Hartnell era. And then he returned, he did this story, and then he returned a couple of decades later to play Baeus in Time of the Ronnie, Sylvester McCoy's first story. Wanda Ventham played Jean Rock, which is like a cool name for a character. Sounds like a spy or something, someone who should have been on the British Avengers TV series, maybe. But Wanda Ventham played Jean Rock, and she played the character Thea Ransom in the Tom Baker story Image of the Fendal. And she was also in Time of the Ronnie as Faroon, the wife of Baeus. So it's kind of interesting that Donald Pickering and Wanda Ventham were in this story, and then return a couple of decades later, and they're both playing a married couple, an alien married couple, in Time of the Ronnie.
Absolutely.
So that was pretty cool. Oh, and by the way, she's kind of notable, Wanda Ventham is, because she is the mother of a certain actor by the name of Benedict Cumberbatch. Maybe you've heard of him.
Oh, very nice. Yes, I might have. Yes,
so,
that's very cool.
So she's Benedict Cumberbatch's mom. She's Doctor Strange's mom.
Very nice.
And she's also Sherlock Holmes's mom, which she actually played several times on Sherlock.
Oh, very nice. So when you hear him, do you think Doctor Strange or do you think Sherlock first? Because I think Sherlock first.
I think Sherlock first, but I'm a big Doctor Strange fan as well. So
yes, I love that movie, absolutely.
Yeah, so primarily I think Sherlock first because that was my first introduction to Benedict Cumberbatch.
Me too.
So, but I'm definitely Doctor Strange is right up there as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely.
Christopher Transel played Stephen Jenkins. Lastly, he was the immigration desk clerk that was very frustrating to the Doctor and Jamie, asking them for their passport.
Yes.
In one of the more comedic moments. He played the character Roger Colbert in The Massacre from the William Hartnell era. And then he turned up in the 70s playing Andrid, who Leela falls in love with in her final story, The Invasion of Time,
Okay.
from the Tom Baker era. So, pretty notable guest cast in this one, I think.
It is,
And it's a pretty solid supporting cast, I think, for this story. All right, trivia. Jesse already talked about one of those, involving Pauline Collins, and we talked about that episodes only 1 and 3 exist. And this story was originally planned to be a William Hartnell story called The Big Store, in which aliens occupied mannequins in a busy department store. Well, hey, that sounds familiar to anyone that watched, Spearhead from Space or Rose. And, the plan was that they would just hang out there in a mall or something, waiting for human hosts to possess, apparently, in this planned story. So they adapted the idea for the Troughton era and turned it into this one, The Faceless Ones, changing the setting to a metropolitan airport. In this case, Gatwick Airport.
Okay, good.
And
I think it works better at the airport.
Yeah. I mean, well, we kind of get the mannequin thing later in the John Pertwee era, and also in the Christopher Eccleston era. So that's okay. We got it eventually. I think that's where they borrowed the idea from, presumably. This story is notable because it features Delia Derbyshire's first revised arrangement of the original Doctor Who theme.
Oh, okay. I did not notice that.
Yeah,
okay.
This story is the first time we get a new version of the theme that's different from the one that originated in An Earthly Child way back in 1963. So this is the second version of the theme that debuts here. Pretty notable. And although they were contracted up until episode 2 of the next story, The Evil of the Daleks, apparently it was decided behind the scenes that Annika Wills and Michael Craze, the actors who played Ben and Polly, would leave the series after filming of episode 2 in this story. Now, both Ben and Polly go missing in this episode because they kind of disappear for like episodes 3, 4, and 5. And then they only turn up like at the very end of 6. So after they get rescued in the final episode. So apparently they had pre-filmed that. And then the footage was kept until episode 6. So they left around the time of episode 2.
I don't know how often this happens, Charles.
Which seems very, very strange. Yeah.
Yes, but it seems like this happens a lot on the classic episodes we choose to watch, that they're either on vacation, they were,
It's just how the show was made back in the 60s.
Yeah, I guess so. It's not very serious.
Well, it's British programming, a lot different from American programming. They've got their own way of doing it, and that's just, how it was. It just seems very strange to us, obviously, here in the States.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure maybe to people, and obviously in the UK, it's pretty normal, I'm guessing.
Right.
And so that's my trivia. That's all I have. Talked about Wanda Ventham being Benedict Cumberbatch's mom, so that's it.
Yeah, very cool.
All right. So we have 3 topics. Okay, we're going to keep this one very simple, because I know Jesse wants to listen to some Springsteen tonight. So, topic number 1, let's talk the Second Doctor, Ben and Polly in their farewell adventure as they depart at the end of the story. And let's also talk Jamie and Samantha, where Jamie kind of gets a little bit of a sort of romance with the introduction of Samantha Briggs, who could have been Ben and Polly's replacement as companions.
So I will tell you, their kind of quasi-romance was one of my favorite parts of the episode.
Okay.
I like the idea.
I wouldn't say it's a full-fledged moment of romance,
No.
but it is kind of a little bit of a odd flirtation between the two.
Yes, and I really I like the idea and the animation. They kind of exchange, a kiss.
Yeah.
It is
when they say goodbye.
It seems like he is attracted to her. She seems attracted to him.
They're both kind of shy about it, though.
They are, and I don't know. I didn't
especially
know if that
Jamie.
was maybe because of I'm seeing the animated, so I didn't get to see the actual actors
Yeah,
if they had chemistry. But I really like the idea that, um, and I wouldn't want this all the time, but the idea that Jamie, a young, good-looking guy, traveling through space and time, you could see him. He might have had been attracted to people and done this. So I thought that was a really fun um, storyline,
yeah,
and I would have liked to seen her continue. But then, of course, I loved Amy and Rory in the TARDIS, so a couple would
yeah,
have been kind of interesting to see that romance,
yeah. And, it's something that they never really did, having two
right?
companions being romantically involved in the classic era.
Unless they were married, right?
Well, I'm not sure who you're
They
thinking of.
never did. They know they didn't know.
There
You're
weren't
right.
married
Even
companions back in the classic
they
era.
weren't. That's right. No, I was thinking of
You're confusing me here.
they
Stop
weren't.
it,
That's right. Like, yeah, damn it. So I
Jackson.
like that. I love the Second Doctor.
Yeah,
I love his
Patrick Troughton. Yeah,
sense of humor. I love and you talked about the banter
yeah.
with, he's so frustrated and trying to say, I'm trying to report, what's your passport? And it almost came across like a who's on first routine, like,
Yes, it was.
a
That's a great
Monty Python
analogy.
routine, okay, and where's your passport? No, I don't need this. What's your passport?
I
So
don't
I
know.
thought that
Third
was really,
base.
really
Yeah,
exactly. I just loved watching him. I thought it was so much fun. Um, and you still get to see he's very smart. You get to see the cleverness of the Doctor.
right.
His plan to go and pretend to be one of the pod people
Yes, that he
was
was
brilliant.
that he was a chameleon duplicate. Yeah,
Yes. Um,
a
and then
doppelganger.
him understanding, very quickly what was going on, in the bluffs, where like, oh, we found them, where, oh, it doesn't matter where and everything. It ended up being a really showcase of his talents and his personality. And I am, as much as I love the animated, I would have loved to seen the actual of, seeing Troughton,
Yeah.
in person, that live.
Well, you might
To see that.
you might be able to find those on YouTube or something.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna.
I would do a search if I were you for
Yeah,
episodes 1 and
will.
3
Yes.
because yeah, it's obviously it's great to have the animation,
Yeah.
which is better than nothing.
Right.
And thankfully, we have the original audio, so you at least hear
Yes.
Patrick Troughton's great comedic timing.
Oh.
But it doesn't obviously compare to having that original audio and the original video.
Hmm.
So I definitely recommend tracking, somewhere in the interwebs, tracking down those first and third episodes because
So,
it's definitely worth it.
you've obviously seen a lot more classic Who than I have,
Just a bit,
but
yeah.
so
Just
you've
a little
seen
bit.
this. This is your second or third time, at least, to see this, right?
Yeah,
Because
this is the
I'm sure.
yeah, because I watched it when I originally bought it in
Yeah.
2020, and then I watched it again over Christmas because I was just in the mood for it. And
Okay.
then this is my third time watching this
So
one.
share talk to me about what your thoughts are and what you kind of did the quasi romance bother you, and what your thoughts on the Doctor.
Yeah. Well, first, let's start with the Doctor. Patrick Troughton is just he's magic. He really is. He's got this such a great comedic timing, and keep in mind this is only Troughton's sixth story for Doctor Who. He's still in his first season here.
Oh,
So
interesting. Okay.
so this is very with Ben and Polly being his first companions, and they're just now leaving. This is very early on in his run. So, but he still seems to have already dialed in on what he wants his Doctor to be by this point.
Yes.
He's intelligent, but he's not afraid to use humor to kind of keep people off balance, especially
Yes.
when he's deliberately trying to annoy authoritative types like the Commandant.
And that's a great point, because he almost deliberately kicks in the humor or his stubbornness or his pretending to be not bright. I'm almost
He
overly
plays he
casual.
plays the
Plays the
fool.
fool, almost overly casual,
Yeah.
just to, to tick off the person who's got that rod up their butt.
Yeah.
And he enjoys doing that so much.
Well, he also does that so that his foes, his enemies, underestimate him.
Yes, I
Like,
totally agree with
like,
that.
oh, we don't have to take him seriously. He's a lunatic. He's a madman in a box, right?
Yes.
So therefore, he's just a buffoon. We don't, he's not a serious threat. Well, that's what the doctor wants you to think. The doctor wants you to think he's crazy, when in fact, he's insanely clever. And as a result, this is why he's able, or she, like in the case of Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor, is able to get the upper hand because their foes underestimate him.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's great to watch. I love one of the things that with Troughton, I love the scene, like he gets taken to that control room to meet the commandant. And he's so desperate. He's like, look, there's a dead body. Maybe you guys should come with us to check it out.
Yes.
And they could care less. They just think, oh, these guys, they don't have any passports, so therefore we're not going to take them seriously. They're just, a bunch of crazies who showed up. Look at the way this guy's dressed. So they're not taking him seriously. So, like, well, I guess we're going to go ahead and have you arrested or whatever. And the doctor pulls out a rubber ball. And he's like, stand back or I'll blow this place to kingdom come. And then he's like, catch. He throws the rubber ball, and while he dashes out of the room, it's like, it's kind of if you've ever seen the GIF of Dave Chappelle where he, he's at this board meeting or whatever, and he's trying to get out of the room, and he knocks over this jug of water and spills it all over the coffee table, causing chaos, and he takes advantage of it by sprinting out of the room.
Yes.
Because of the distraction. Perfect. Yeah. So it's the same principle.
Yes. Absolutely.
And but he's always thinking on his feet. He has to scramble a lot, this doctor. And another scene I loved was when he was captured by the chameleons and brought aboard their ship, their space station, where they're holding everybody. They're trying to replace him with a chameleon duplicate. Mm-hmm. And he starts, talking about a bit of nonsense, trying to play for time. And while everybody's kind of distracted, he palms an actual screwdriver or something, sticks it into the control unit, the machine that's supposed to cause the transfer, and disables it. Right. He's like, kind of like,
yes.
Whoops. So,
yes, that was very clever. Very done. I thought of like, oh, it's a real screwdriver, not a sonic screwdriver.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was very well done.
That was the unsonic screwdriver.
Yes, indeed.
So it's just little things like that. Troughton's one of my favorite doctors. I just love him. I think he's, Troughton's comedic timing is brilliant. I really enjoy him. So Ben and Polly, we're saying goodbye to them. They're missing through episodes 3 through 5, but what we do get to see, especially of Polly, is that she gets replaced by a chameleon duplicate. Mm-hmm. So we get to see Annika Wills playing a completely different character here. She's playing a chameleon who just happens to look like Polly. And she's, it causes a lot of great confusion and adds to the mystery because this, quote unquote Polly, this duplicate Polly, claims not to be Polly at all. She's somebody else. She's somebody, this girl from Switzerland who's here on a work visa.
Yes.
And, turns out she's supposedly working for, well, you guessed it, Chameleon Tours.
Yes.
Conveniently enough. So she gets to stay in the airport, and that helps the doctor and Jamie trying to help sort out the mystery of why she suddenly claims not to know them and doesn't know who she is, or she claims not to be Polly, right? Yeah. So it's just so it's kind of great to see at least Annika Wills get something like that.
And one of the things I liked their departure, the symmetry of, what year is this doctor?
Right.
When they realize,
let's talk about that.
We've gone full circle and we're back to shortly after we left.
Yeah.
So we could pick up
Like
where
6
we
hours or
were.
something after we left. Yeah.
Yeah, and we could pick up where we are and continue our life. And
Did you notice about the
you
date, by the way?
no, what was the date?
So the date they said was the actual day that they got back was July 20th, 1966.
Okay.
So that is 3 years to the day of the first moon landing.
Ah, okay.
A little bit of trivia there, but I
Okay,
just thought
very nice.
so. It was a pretty important day, but just not for another 3 years.
Yeah. And I like the idea that you've had your fun, and now then you're ready back for some normalcy. I
Kind of like
I don't know
kind of like
about
we just talked about with Ryan when he
yeah.
left in Revolution of the Daleks.
Yeah, exactly.
He traveled with a doctor. He had some adventures, but he's kind of ready to settle back down on a life on Earth.
And I remember when I was younger, and I don't know if I'd feel that way now, but
Yeah.
after like a long vacation, like, one of those 10-day vacations where you extended vacation,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm almost ready to get back to work for a normal routine,
Yeah.
and so
I want to get back to my life. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so I like that exit. I like the idea that they're doing this together. And the doctor was understanding and supportive of him.
Yeah.
So I think that was a really nice exit. Well written.
I thought it was interesting because, the doctor makes this really interesting comment for 1967 because we still don't know a lot about his background.
Yeah.
But at this point, this is still a couple of seasons before the War Games, before Gallifrey is even introduced. But he makes this comment, when, like Ben and Polly got home, and he says, well, that's nice for you. I never got back to mine.
I did notice that line, Charles, and I thought it was interesting, and I did understand.
I never got back
context.
to my planet, he says. Yeah.
Yeah, the context of, because he doesn't talk about, just the idea that, I've never been able to go home again. When the reality is, we know he could if he wanted to.
Well,
right?
At this point, he still didn't have control of the TARDIS properly, navigation-wise.
Yes.
So maybe, but I don't think he ever wanted to go back anyway. Remember, he was on the run from his own people. He and Susan. And then when Susan left, so even if he did have control of the TARDIS navigation systems, he still wouldn't want it to go home.
Good point. Very good point.
So,
I like it.
Yeah. But Jamie and Samantha, I want to talk about them really quickly before we switch topics. So Jamie starts asserting himself with Ben and Polly kind of taken off the board for most of the story, half the story. Jamie has to step up as the kind of lead companion here, and he does. He's very active in this story compared to more recent stories. He encounters Samantha while trying to stake out the counter for Chameleon Tours, and poor Samantha is looking for her lost brother. That's how so she relates to the mystery. She's someone who, like, her brother was supposedly on this tour and mysteriously vanished, and she's trying to get answers, but Chameleon Tours, especially with the Polly duplicate, the Polly doppelganger, at the counter, basically shutting her down. She gets really frustrated, and Jamie's like, well, I couldn't help over here and about your problem, and then they get to talking. And from there, it kind of starts this little sort of flirtation between the two.
Now, I'm a big Jamie fan, but I do not remember in other episodes. It seemed like this time he was a little more man out of time than he normally is. Like, making comments about not understanding phrases or technology or things.
Well, you know what? Right in the beginning of the story, he's freaked out because he leaves the TARDIS, and there's this airplane shooting over his head,
Yes,
and he's like,
right. And he look,
I was like, oh, flying beastie. So
yes, exactly.
he
Yes,
freaks out over an airplane, understandably.
he does. Yes, absolutely. How long has he been a companion at this point?
This would, he started with Troughton's second story, The Highlanders,
Okay, okay.
which is where, the doctor picked him up in 18th century Scotland, I believe. So this is the sixth story, so it's been about four
Okay,
since then.
good deal.
Yeah, four since
Okay.
since he joined the TARDIS. So he's been around a little while. Like he was in the Macra Terror, he was in the Moon Base where he fought the Cybermen, and the Underwater Menace, the one before that. So
they are two of my favorite Doctor companion duos. They just have
Patrick
a good
Troughton and Fraser
relationship.
Hines, yeah.
Yes, they are. They're really nice.
They really have great on-screen chemistry, this doctor-companion relationship. And it's interesting because this is, two guys. This is
yes.
a male doctor with a male companion. And it's almost like this kind of odd bromance between the two, I think. So,
Really like it.
oh, did we lose you?
No, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm trying to turn off my camera when I'm adjusting.
I think you turned off your audio in the process.
Okay.
Good, all right.
No, I'm here.
Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so Jamie and Samantha, they have this, a very interesting relationship forming, this kind of friendship. Jamie, Samantha kind of flirts with him a little bit more than he flirts with her, and she seems like she picks on him, but she seems interested in him. She kind of pushes him a little bit. She's like, why do you just normally take orders from the doctor, and do you always do what you're told? And Jamie's trying to look, no, I'm not like that at all, and I'm my own man, and
yeah, lass, I can do this.
I can do things. I'm smart, not like everybody says. To quote Fredo in Godfather.
Yeah. I did think it was funny that they kept talking about, we've got to save these young people. It's because they're young, that they've got to be saved, not just people. It had to be all these young people. We have to save them. Well, it's just an odd phrase.
Well, I think it's how they kind of view the young people back then, especially in the 60s.
Yes, I agree.
That they're just a bunch of kids. As the older type. So they're they don't know what they're doing. They're just a bunch of crazy kids with their longer hair and their Beatles records and all that.
Yeah.
So
that craziness. Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, at the very end of the story, Jamie and Samantha, Jamie says goodbye to Samantha, and Samantha seems sad to see Jamie go.
I think she does. Yeah, I agree. That's why I said it was a very sweet little romance.
She gives him a nice little kiss at the end.
Yes.
So she obviously, liked him.
Yeah, I agree.
And appreciated his help. So just thought it was very cool. And Pauline Collins did a really good job. I think she could have been a very interesting companion had they continued with her. I think she would have been a stronger companion than the one they picked. Deborah Watling's Victoria Waterfield.
Okay.
Who is from the Victorian era and kind of like Jamie, someone from the past. But I think, I think she would have been more interesting because Victoria was so passive. She was very meek and demure. And, all she did really was scream. She was a screamer.
Oh, no.
But Samantha, was more of a spitfire. And I think she really would have brought something to the table had Pauline Collins been willing to stay.
And if you go to her Wikipedia page, she's had a brilliant career.
Yeah.
So she absolutely had some acting chops.
Oh yeah.
That could have brought onto the series.
I think she'd done some stage work and a bunch of stage work and other things, other movies and whatnot. So
absolutely.
All right, let's move on. Unless you had anything else.
Nope, I'm good.
And there was a lot of characters there, so we had to kind of cover that. Topic number 2. Let's talk about Inspector Crossland. D.I. Inspector Crossland from Scotland Yard. Let's talk about Commandant Charles Gordon and his assistant Jean Rock,
Yeah.
who gets a little bit of an action sequence at the end in the parking lot as
Yeah.
she tries to help track down the real people that have been replaced by the chameleons left behind in cars in the parking lot on the
Yeah.
airport. So what are your thoughts on these characters? Um, you want to talk about the commandant first, or you want to talk about the inspector, the detective inspector Crossland?
So I think in both cases the Doctor is fighting bureaucracy as much as he's fighting the chameleons in this series,
Yeah,
in this episode, and I think that was interesting, and I know it frustrates him, and they're
that's something that happens a lot in the
yeah.
Troughton and the John Pertwee eras.
Yeah, they're very British. They're very about following the process and following the rules. We shouldn't do things out of order. And we've got to follow what's our policy? What's the correct policy and what's the rules?
Yes,
And the Doctor is not about that. He's about let's take care of the problem. And so I love that interaction. It did make for some funny scenes. I love seeing Patrick Troughton be frustrated,
right.
and almost like pushing his head against the wall, like banging his head on the wall, like ah.
Well, the
So that
commandant
was
was pretty
really good.
frustrated too. To be fair, he looked like he
Yes.
was about to have an embolism or an aneurysm right there in the dealing. Like every time he turns around, the doctor's back in the control room.
Yeah. I mean, so
giving him more grief.
that oil and vinegar, right? Of they're just not going to match.
Yeah, they're just butting heads with one another. The doctor, who obviously we know is trying to figure out this big mystery, and the commandant, who is essentially an obstructionist, who doesn't want to get involved. He just wants to get back to the normal operations of running Gatwick Airport.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all
I
he
want
cares
everything to
about.
be smooth. Don't give me any bumps. Let's just move forward,
Like,
right?
I don't know who these crazy people are, but get them out of my sight. And then,
Yeah.
but then, thankfully, the doctor gets an ally with the detective inspector Crossland, the
Yes.
DI Crossland. That the detective inspector is the one who kind of talks the commandant down. He's like, look,
Yes.
the doctor may be unorthodox, but he's the only one giving us our first lead with this chameleon tours. That we know something's up with these guys now.
Yeah.
And
And
so what did you
it's
so
the
what did you make
idea.
of Crossland?
Well, it's the idea. Look, something's wrong,
Yeah,
and you can try to keep fighting all you want, but it appears that this doctor person is our best chance to try to figure out what's happening and how to fix it. And so I like that scene about it.
yeah,
I like that dynamics of them where he's figuring out, well, he may be crazy, but I just want to get to the bottom of what's happening.
right. And then the actor who plays Crossland ends up getting to play a chameleon duplicate because the leader
Yes.
of the chameleons takes his place.
Yes.
And we could talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the chameleons in our next topic. But it was interesting that the actor Bernard Kay gets to kind of play a dual role as well, just kind of like that Annika Wills did.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was fun for the actor,
Right.
to play. It was,
Because here's the DI inspector or the detective inspector. He's very likable. He's trying to
yes,
help the doctor, and then you have
right.
here he is playing the big bad behind this operation in the final episodes.
And, one of the things that we have to acknowledge is, having chameleons, having duplicates, replacing, I talked about, body snatchers and all this thing.
Yeah.
So we've seen this kind of story before, but, this was in the, late
Yeah.
60s?
Right. Yeah,
So we were
67,
doing this.
1967,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so at this point, it isn't, I don't know if it's been that done that often. I'm not sure. The story felt fresh to me. I felt like, and I think a lot of it had to do with the dynamics. We just did an audio drama where you were limited to your cast.
Yes.
And this, you mentioned earlier, this was a big cast. There was
Yes.
a lot of actors and roles that you kind of had to keep track of.
Yeah, I only kind of hit the highlights of the cast because of their Doctor Who connections and whatnot, or notable film appearances. But yeah, there was a lot of different actors that we could have talked about. Like Jenkins, or just some of the other Spencer, and one of the other chameleons and all that. So all right, Gene Rock. Any thoughts about Gene Rock, who kind of helped in that the car park sequence?
Yeah.
She ends up saving Samantha from one of the chameleons.
Yeah, she was very interesting. So we ended up having a couple of strong women that weren't companions.
Right.
That normally the action goes to your main cast. And in this, they actually gave some pretty significant screen time and significant actions to the guest cast, which was kind of fun to see. I liked her. I liked the idea that she's wondering what's going on and going forward. So yeah, I liked her. I thought it was cool.
Yeah. The name Gene Rock, it kind of sounds like a comics character name, like
it
a little bit of
does,
Jean Grey thrown in with like Sergeant Rock a little bit. So it just sounds like this really cool name, like that could have been like a spy or something, I think. But
yeah, exactly. I was thinking like a James Bond.
Yeah, like a Bond girl or something.
Yes, exactly. That it has that kind of thought. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and she even looks like a Bond girl. She could have been a Bond girl.
Yeah, the animated version looked good. Like I said, I need to go check the live action.
Yeah, you should. Yeah,
okay.
Good.
Yeah,
I just thought it was, and you bring up a great point that this story, this is 1967. Actually gave us some pretty notable, strong female characters in this story. Because the doctor also helps. When they try to infiltrate the chameleon space station above, looming above Earth, that so she's she's a very strong character as well for this time period.
Yeah, it did. It was very strong.
This is a very progressive episode, I thought. A very progressive story for back then.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about the chameleons in the next segment.
We might as well go ahead. You want to just go ahead and segue with that?
I just think it was an interesting concept, right? That they're flying off. They in the middle of the plane, right? They shrink them down and store them because they need to restore their planet. And
at first you thought, well, where do the teenagers go?
Exactly.
And it turns out, well, they just shrunk them really small.
Yes.
They didn't go anywhere.
And with animation, that looked really cool.
Yeah. So you like the premise of their
yes.
of the mystery behind the disappearing kids.
Yeah, and the idea, like, why didn't you shrink? And or why didn't you fall asleep? Why didn't eat or drink anything? Oh, well, that was the first part. I also the whole discussion of the plane's crashing because it's not moving. When they talk about radar and the doctor going, well, it could be going up as well as going down, and how no one really noticed that this plane would take off and then come back, that because the airport's so busy, no one's really paying attention. So it was actually a pretty decent plan.
Right, exactly. Because especially they're not used to dealing with anything extraterrestrial.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of it's up to the doctor who specializes in the extraterrestrial to go like you said. They're just think, oh, the only place that plane could have gone was down, and the doctor's like, well, no. What if it went up?
Yes, exactly.
What do you mean up? Like to space? What? What are you talking about?
Another thing I wanted your thoughts on.
Yeah.
In the past, which is the future, but
Yes.
in episodes we have discussed in the
This
past,
is Next Stop
they,
Everywhere. We specialize in the past and the
yes,
future. Yes.
the doctor always says, "I can help you." But in this case, it's like, well, you're going to give it up, and I'm sure your scientists will figure out an answer. Now, at the
Right.
very end, he says, I could help them, but he doesn't promise that he's going to work with the scientist. He's just like, give up, and, we're going to hope for the best that your scientists will figure out a way for your race not to die.
Well, he's probably kind of pissed off at them because they
Yes.
tried this.
Yes, I
So he's
agree.
probably kind of like, okay, look, you try to kidnap a bunch of innocent Earth kids and
Yes.
replace them
Yeah.
just to keep your existence. So he's probably like, okay, listen here, kids. So you're gonna give the humans their bodies, or like the originals, let them go home, and you guys are just gonna have to figure this out on your own.
Now, one thing I need you to tell me about is
Yeah,
the main villains, the way they drew them, they
yeah.
seemed very wooden. But when they were live action, was the
Yeah.
actor working that, playing that wooden?
No, I don't think
Okay,
so.
okay.
I don't think so. I mean, the guy playing Blade,
Hmm.
Donald Pickering, he's kind of like, he does speak with a very monotone voice.
Yes.
You know, but he's trying to be a little bit sinister. If you notice
Yeah.
early on, especially in the early episodes, Blade is a very sinister character.
Hmm.
Like there's that great scene that he has where they bring DI Inspector Crossland. Like he's basically trying to shut the next flight down. He gets on the plane. He's like, "Look, you guys need to like not take off,"
Hmm.
until he ends up going to the cockpit to find out what's going on, and then they reveal themselves to be the chameleons and like, look, okay, you wanted to see what happened to these kids. Well, here you go. And so he's very sinister. But then when at the end of the story, when his own life is threatened because the Doctor's allies on Earth, the Commandant and Jean and the others, have figured out where eventually they figure out where the chameleons have kept the original bodies, and they have the power to essentially kill them. Then he's like, maybe this wasn't the best plan.
Well, right, and they actually kill someone.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, which I was a
So
little
just to
shocked
prove
about.
to prove their point.
Yeah, I was a little shocked about that.
But they kind of almost had to, because otherwise they wouldn't have believed them.
Oh, I get it, Charles. I'm just saying, like, wow,
Yeah, I
that's
know.
really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And so, it's a lot, back in the 60s, it was a lot simpler to kill aliens back then. I'm just
Yes,
saying.
it was. Yes, it was,
Yeah.
Charles.
It
Well
wasn't
said.
so PC back in the 60s
Okay.
to kill aliens.
Right.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, he's like, okay, this is going sideways. This leader, your whole plan is going south. Um, I'm going to start looking out for myself now.
Yes.
So you're out of the picture. I'm going to kill you. He kills the leader, and he's like, okay, everybody, why don't we work a deal?
Yes.
And you just don't kill us now,
Well,
because he knows that the humans have the upper hand here.
and one of the things I really liked is the clever way the Doctor sowed dissension. Like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, they've got their bodies safe. Well, how are yours? And the
Yeah.
people are like, yeah.
Causing that doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how about our bodies? What's the status of that? So I thought that was very clever on the Doctor, and kind of, there's no trust between thieves kind of subplot.
Well, yeah, I think he was probably, he probably viewed the chameleons as being a little bit paranoid.
Yes.
So he's just kind of like, gaslighting them. He's trying to fuel that paranoia
I agree.
and to make them turn on each other
Yes.
to
Absolutely.
humanity's advantage, apparently.
Yeah.
But so what did you make of the chameleons themselves? Did you find them to be an interesting alien?
I
And
did.
would you I mean, do you think they would be an interesting villain to bring back in the modern era?
So once again, because I'm just doing the animation, they
Yeah.
looked good. They, and we just there's a little bit of the Vision in them on the
A little
animated
bit.
version, just a little. And I like them. I like them a lot. I like the idea of, this duplicates. It would have been an interesting story to see them coming again, replacing people. It was, and
They kind of look like one of those people, like if you had like one of those old models from way back in the '60s or early '70s, where you had it was a human and it was like this little statue or whatever, but it had no skin. So all it had was
yes,
the bones and the muscles underneath.
yes. So you can
Where
see
you
that.
could,
I do remember that. Yes, that's a good analogy, Charles.
but they kind
That's
of looked a little
exactly
bit like that,
yeah, it
right?
did. It looked really good. It was very creepy, and
I thought they were cool looking aliens, and
I did too.
obviously with modern makeup and whatnot, I think it could be really cool if they brought them back.
I do too, and I love the once they figured out the guy was a chameleon, the way they threatened him and
Yeah,
and used him to get more information and to figure that out. There was a lot of, as I said, once you they had it took the 3 episodes to set everything up, but once you had the last 3, it moved at a quick pace. A
yeah.
lot of stories and a lot of things, until it gets to an ending, and we get a cliffhanger ending, which was kind of
Yes, we
fun
do.
for me. I was like, "What?"
Yeah, because you have to wait. It gets resolved in the evil of the Daleks,
Yeah.
which is another incomplete story.
Okay.
But the audio exists if you want to find out what happens.
Well,
I know what
well,
happens,
I bet
or if
you
you
do,
want,
Charles. Yeah.
you could also go on Wikipedia to find out what
Absolutely.
happens.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
But
I just think they were
got to
good
find out what
villains.
happens to the TARDIS, right?
Yes, exactly. Like, how did
Who took the TARDIS?
Doctor? How do you keep losing your TARDIS? Yeah,
He needs to
I
put
was
like a baby cam on that thing.
exactly, or
If you just get one of those little phone apps, and then you
yeah,
get
find my TARDIS instead of
yeah,
find my
find my
phone.
TARDIS.
Find my TARDIS. Yes,
Yep.
that was great. Yeah, I just think they were really good villains, and they wrapped things up well. We had the departure of companions, and I thought that was really handled well. Um, and I just love Jamie and the Doctor.
Right.
I have yet to see an episode that features Jamie and the Doctor that I have not just enjoyed the heck out of. And so I
Okay.
always appreciate that you pick those when we don't do seasons, but when we're doing
Yeah.
rounds of interview, I guess we could call them seasons the way we do this. But I'm always glad when you get us a second Doctor and Jamie.
Well, the good thing is for you, Jamie is in every Troughton story except for his first.
Okay, good. So very nice.
So the odds are pretty good that you'll see
Yes,
Jamie. If we're going to cover a second Doctor story, that Jamie is going to be there.
very nice. Good deal.
So you got like a 97% chance of Jamie being there,
Okay, very
which
good.
is pretty good odds,
There
right?
is good.
All right. Anything else about this episode before we close out our discussion of this?
I can't think of anything, Charles. Like I said, I liked it. I am now. I have enough interest in it now that I will go to YouTube and kind of
Yeah.
dig up some of the other episodes and kind of
The live
look
action.
at that, live action, to guess at least if I can get some feelings on it. But
I
for
think you
what it's
should.
worth,
I think you'd enjoy it.
the animation wasn't bad. I realize they don't spend a lot of money on animation, but it's good enough that wasn't a distraction to me.
Yeah,
I just was able to
they
enjoy
have
the
to make
story.
money on these projects so they can
Yeah,
keep doing more.
absolutely, yes.
So I understand the cost effective reasons. As an adult now, I hate to
Yeah.
admit that, but because what's the point of being grown up if you can't act childish, right? That's what Doctor Who told me.
Exactly.
But I understand the practicality of it because I want to get more animated projects. So these have to make money
Absolutely. And besides, we
because
want
we
them.
need the animated evil of the Daleks so we can see what happens,
Well,
right?
I want more animated Big Finish audios. We
Yeah,
don't get any of
I
those.
think I think everybody would love animated Big Finish audios. I keep hoping someday they're going to do those.
Yeah, I think so. I think those would sell well. I think there
Yeah.
would be a good market for that.
I think so too. All right.
Yeah.
So, do you have any favorite quotes of the episode?
I did not write down any quotes.
Okay,
But
I got a few.
good deal. Thanks.
All right. So, I already did it's a flying beastie that Jamie does in the beginning.
Yes.
Jamie and the doctor, this is during the passport exchange. And Jamie's like, "What's a passport?" And the doctor replies, "Oh, some sort of official mumbo jumbo." The doctor, the commandant,
Mm-hmm.
the doctor says, "That was definitely made by a ray gun." And the commandant's like, "Ray gun, burnt fibers, foreign stamps." The doctor corrects him, "Unused foreign stamps." The commandant's like, "All right, unused foreign stamps. I must be as mad as you, even to be listening to you."
Yeah, and I did think that was a nice subplot of them.
The doctor was a bit of a detective in this.
He was a detective to figure out how they were getting all their notes back and making
the postcards
family,
and all that.
The family not worry.
Yeah, that was one of the things that we didn't really discuss was the postcards.
Yeah,
because Chameleon Tours, the front for the Chameleons,
Yeah.
comes up with this idea of like, okay, we'll have these kids fill out these postcards in advance.
Yeah.
And we'll say that, we'll mail them for you.
Yes.
To your parents and relatives and whatnot.
Yes.
And as Samantha discovers, is what happened to her brother was that they lied and essentially had the kids do that, kidnapped the kids,
Yes.
and then sent the postcards anyway to cover up why they're, claiming that they're having a good time, whatever they're doing.
And it was nice to see.
To act like they're still around.
Her focus on trying to find her brother gave her a little extra depth as a character.
Yeah, it was a reason for her to get involved, and they gave her a really strong reason.
I agree.
So speaking of Samantha, I also have quotes for her, where Samantha, she's talking about the doctor. She says, "Hey, he's a right weirdy, isn't he?" And Jamie's like, "No, I wish I had his brains." Samantha's all like, "You're all right as you are." So
I have a question, Charles. Can you do a New Jersey accent? Because I have an idea of doing a comedy bit on Set Listing Bruce, and I don't do voices, and you do great voices.
I do okay voices.
I
don't do great voices.
No, you do great voices.
Well, I have watched a lot of The Sopranos.
Okay, so right.
So I know a little bit I could probably do a little bit of Jersey.
All right. Back to Doctor Who.
Yeah,
anyway, I just want to say I love how I don't know if you have great. Let me put it this way. You do great Doctor Who voices. You are very good at mimicking the doctors.
I do okay. I do all right. Certain doctors better than others, I think.
Yeah.
Troughton's is just, I really love Troughton doing him.
And Eccleston you do pretty good.
It takes a little effort, but
okay.
I have my good days and my bad days.
Okay. All right.
But I give it my best shot.
I'm embarrassing you, so we're going to move on.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. So, Jamie and Samantha, again, saying, Jamie's going, "Oh, if only the doctor hadn't told me to watch this plane, or watch this place." And Samantha's like, "Oh, do you always do everything you're told?" And Jamie's like, "No, but doctor trusts me."
Yeah, that was nice.
Samantha says, "Yeah, that's your trouble, isn't it? All right, stay here. After all, they can only murder me."
And a pretty girl's calling you out, so of course Jamie, kind of worked on. Yeah, I like that.
He had to go. I mean, at that point, it's like, you got called out, son. You gotta step up. So, and all right. So, what's your rating for this story?
So, I gave this a lot of debate, and so I ended up and I want to stress that, I liked it a lot, but I'm going to give it because of the way the story unfolded. I'm going to give it 7.5. 7.5 missing passports.
There you go.
I liked it. I liked it. I think I would almost do a 6 and like an 8 or something, 8.5, because the last 3 were really strong. How about you?
Okay, so you averaged out
Yes.
7.5.
Yes. How about you?
Okay. I'm a little bit higher than you. I give it an 8 out of 10 flying beasties.
Yeah, it would not take me long, and I bet you, if I had done like you did and not seen it all
Yeah,
animated, I probably would have given it that extra half point. This was
right.
good. This was a really nice one to visit with. Um,
It's a fun episode, a friend
it
story.
is a
Yeah.
fun episode, and I'm glad that they took the time to animate it so that we could enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's one that doesn't, it's not really hyped. I think it's an underrated story. And I think
Yeah,
now that it's been animated, it probably will rank a little bit higher in a lot of fans' eyes. Now that
yeah,
they've get to experience the whole thing.
yeah. I
All
agree.
right.
Absolutely.
All right. Reverse the polarity. So I got the idea for this one from a certain listener who we'll get feedback from here shortly.
Yay.
But so we're going to reverse the polarity because we reverse it, then reverse it back again as we go forward in time to 2011 with the Rebel Flesh / the Almost People.
I almost brought that up when we were talking about how often the duplicates in a
Yes.
storyline, and I almost said, well, of course, they kind of did the similar storyline. So excellent choice, Charles.
Yeah. So, like I said, this was one that it kind of was suggested. I'd read the email, and I was just like, you're absolutely right. So I agree with our feedback
Oh, good.
person here. So like I said, we'll talk about them shortly. But these were the 5th and 6th episodes of Series 6 in 2011, written by Matthew Graham. So this was during the Matt Smith era. And, the aforementioned Amy Pond and Rory Williams. So one of the fan favorite eras of Doctor Who, Modern Who. And I won't go through the whole thing for the sake of time, but this is like, Jesse said, this is a little similar because the TARDIS gets caught up in this solar tsunami and then materializes on Earth in the 22nd century. So kind of in the future, the 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory, find themselves on this remote island where there's like a factory that's like pumping out a highly corrosive acid to the mainland. Why they're doing it, I don't know. Batteries, maybe.
Yeah,
Who knows?
Yes.
But they have this crew of a factory that uses a self-replicating fluid called the flesh, from which they create doppelgangers of themselves called gangers. That's original. So essentially, it's like they're creating duplicates of themselves, and so obviously that really relates to this story. And we go through a little bit of hijinks because one of the gangers that gets created is essentially a psychotic that turns into a monster that they have to deal with, and so it's a pretty fun little adventure. It's a 2-parter. And at the very end of the story, it's pretty notable because the Doctor, once everything's all said and done, they go back aboard of the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, well, actually, this wasn't an accident that we showed up here. This is intentional because I wanted to investigate the flesh in its raw form because Amy is a ganger herself. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
So
I remember being very shocked when that happened.
Yeah, so he like uses the sonic and turns the fake Amy back into a pile of raw flesh. And meanwhile, the real Amy wakes up pregnant in this white tube, which is being observed by the eye patch lady, who we find out later is Madame Kovarian, as Amy starts entering labor.
Yes.
So cliffhanger.
Yes.
What happened to Amy? And where is she? When is she gonna have her baby and all that?
How long has she been gone? All that.
How long has she been gone? Yeah. So this was a big twist that happened at the end of this story.
It was a very big twist. Absolutely.
That I'm sure shocked a lot of people. Well, it shocked me back
I did
when I first watched this episode. All right. So if you enjoyed the Faceless Ones, check out the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People. That's my recommendation. So we did get feedback. We have one. So Jesse, do you want to read this one since we only have one?
I'll let you, because I'm on my laptop and I do not have that window open.
Fair enough. All right.
Thank you.
So we have writing in once again the wonderful Holly Mack writing in. Hi, Holly, and thank you for the suggestion for reverse the polarity this time. I really appreciate it. Hey, Charles and Jesse, writing in about the Faceless Ones. She says, this was quite the interesting story. It was nice to see the team up again of Ben, Polly, and Jamie with the Doctor. Knew something was fishy with Chameleon Tours as soon as they brought out postcards for people to post. Nice sentiment, but red flags going up rather quickly, right? The team up between Sharon, I think she means Samantha, and Jamie was something that I wasn't sure was going to enjoy at first, but Samantha isn't a damsel in distress. No.
No, she wasn't.
She wasn't. That's why I liked her.
Mm-hmm.
Crossland was an interesting character that wasn't about to brush off the Doctor as crazy. He most certainly could have. Makes me wonder if Crossland wasn't some sort of undercover unit agent, or that he should be made one with the way he was reacting to everything the Doctor was telling and showing him. Ooh, that's a good idea. That's a good little bit of fun fan fiction that somebody should write.
Yes, indeed.
I have to say, that was a very interesting storyline. The main bad guys aren't even named. Well, we call them the chameleons.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if we won't see something like them again later on New Who. I mean, they kind of remind me slightly of the doppelganger ooze that the 11th Doctor, Rory, and Amy met. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Very nice.
So thank you, Holly. Always lovely to hear from you.
Yeah.
And great points.
Yeah, before you tell everyone how to reach out to us, I did want to give a I think we may have a solid convert now. I've been talking about my buddy John that I at my new job that he's now reached the Peter Capaldi era. So he's been a pretty steady watching, and this is why I know we have him. He says that the credit sequence of the time and kind of the clockwork and everything on Capaldi's is one of his
in Deep Breath.
in one of his favorite opening credit sequence of all the Doctors. But this is the version of the theme that he didn't care for. And
I agree, because Capaldi's theme arrangement, that Murray Gold did, is not my favorite arrangement.
But he's engaged enough in the show that he now actually can talk about the credit sequence, and the theme made me smile. He is enjoying Capaldi. He says he is a little grumpy. He says, but I really like it. He says, I like the attraction of him and Claire and how jealous he is of Danny and that whole thing. So it was just really, it's been nice seeing him, from this perspective, and he's gone from Eccleston all the ways up to Capaldi now. So
one of us. So
I
got him.
Our listeners and you kind of how John is doing. So good.
Well, now, John, hopefully you're listening to us here at Next Stop Everywhere.
Absolutely.
Like a good Whovian does.
Yes, indeed. So if someone wants to give us feedback, how can they, John? Oh, Charles. Yes.
Not John.
Yeah. No.
All right. We've only been doing this 6 years, Jackson. You should know better.
Are you a chameleon? Are you? Yes.
Maybe I am. I guess we'll never know. All right. So if you want to be like Holly, and please write to us. Write to us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for the Southgate Media Group at thegmail.com, or you can reach us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on Twitter. Facebook, of course, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Jesse, where can they reach you and hear more of your illustrious work?
You can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW, Facebook Jesse Jackson, Instagram on Jesse Jackson. You can hear me talk about Bruce Springsteen and music on Set Listing Bruce. Coming up tomorrow, I have a episode with Todd Goldberg, the best-selling writer. He actually has worked with Brad Meltzer on some other things. Really great interview. I'm also in the process of interviewing a lot of fans. We're going to have a whole friendship month in March where people join us and talk about how they became friends via Bruce Springsteen's music. And
Nice.
so, yeah, it's. I've already had 3 or 4 episodes, and it's been really, really interesting. And then what I'm really proud about right now is Charles, Nick, and I are talking WandaVision on the Phantom
Yes, we
Zone,
are.
and it is such a delightful show. The last one that Charles and I talked together really was Stargirl. And by the way, on my other podcast, How Many, when we listed the 7 shows that we
Yeah.
liked the most in 2020, Stargirl made my list.
Oh, yeah.
I just I really
Now, we
just
did talk a couple episodes of the pilots for the Flash
yes, we did.
1990 series and the Flash 2014 series.
Yeah, but you were getting the main man and his 2 co-hosts with Nick and me and Charles. So it's the dynamic trio talking WandaVision, and we. I hope you check out the first episode.
I thought you were the main man. You're the main man.
No. But you actually think Nick is going to end up taking over both of us as he continues to get better at podcasting.
Yes, he
I hope
does.
you check out WandaVision, the first 2 episodes.
Well, he is a professional DJ, so we have to kind of give him his props.
Then come back and listen to us talk about it, because it is a very unique take and a new story in the Marvel Universe, and I just had a blast talking to you about it, and I can't hype it enough. How about you, Charles?
Yeah, and obviously we get to talk another one here on Sunday.
Absolutely.
So stay tuned, everybody. All right, so as for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn Good Coffee and Hot, where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here and Next Stop Everywhere. So Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, Big Finish Audios, and more. And all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts for Southgate Media, including, the aforementioned The Phantom Zone podcast, where, like Jesse said, DJ Nick, Jesse, and I are having a blast talking WandaVision. And we released our review discussion of episodes 1 and 2, because they released those in the same day here this past week. And so we've got episode 3 coming up very soon, just in about 4 days from now, I believe. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up, and looking to be a very interesting series where we start off in this very, surreal, like 50s sitcom world, and then we're going to be like going through the various decades as there's this underlying mystery that gets revealed. And a lot of great actors, just incredible performances by Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen in this series. And I definitely hope everybody checks us out on the Phantom Zone podcast. I'm sure Jesse would appreciate it. I'm sure Nick would appreciate it. I know I do too. So please check that out. Also, Ghost with the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here on Next Stop Everywhere. And we'll again very, very, very soon, where we talk all things Twin Peaks and David Lynch. And happy birthday again, David Lynch. And we're going to be, we just finished our review of Dune that was posted this past week. And then coming up next week, we're going to be discussing the David Lynch film Wild at Heart, starring Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern and Diane Ladd and, Willem Dafoe and others. So I think that'll be quite a fun time, and I hope everybody tunes in. And then Titan Talk the Titans podcast, where Nick and Jesse and we discuss Titans and Doom Patrol. Those shows are kind of on hiatus right now, although Titans seems to be gearing up as we got the casting news of who's going to be playing Barbara Gordon in Titans Season 3. Hopefully we'll get enough, and maybe we can record an episode of Titan Talk at some point as we do a little preview of Season 3 whenever that gets announced. And last but certainly not least, Drunk Cinema, where Zan and this is our little side gig project where we have fun having adult beverages and adult conversation. We watch movies. We've watched Batman 1989, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Die Hard. And coming up just in a couple of days, we're going to be discussing The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, starring Peter Weller, John Lithgow, Ellen Barkin, Jeff Goldblum, lots of great actors, and just a great little blast from the past in this nice cult classic from the 1980s.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to discuss.
It will be. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our discussion of the Faceless Ones. I know I did. And I'm glad Jesse enjoyed the story. And next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 216, as Jesse and I are joined by a special guest companion once again. So you've heard 3 episodes in a row without one.
Yeah, so you guys are ready. Yes.
So I'm sure you're more than thankful that
Yes,
somebody else gets to chime in besides yours truly, as Zan Sprouse returns to Next Stop Everywhere. I'm very excited about this because we're going to be discussing Resurrection of the Daleks.
Ooh, yes.
So now that we talked all the Auton stories, Zan was very interested in talking Daleks, especially knowing that Jesse's not a big Dalek guy. So she feels that that's something that needs to be addressed here on Next Stop Everywhere, and has agreed to discuss a fun little story from the Peter Davison era.
Good.
As we get another companion departure in this story. I won't say which one.
Okay.
So this is a big one as well. And we also get the return of Davros.
Nice.
So that's always fun, and this should be a great one to talk about, and definitely glad that Jesse and Zan are going to be discussing this one with me. I think it'll be quite the lovely time.
I think it will be too.
Because Zan's always, just wonderful to talk to.
Zan is great. I am jealous all the time when I listen to Druk Cinema and going, it is so much fun. So I'm glad we get to talk to her. I want to stress again, it's Happy Inauguration Day as
yes, it is.
We're recording. It's
welcome back, America. We missed you.
Yes, and I thank you, Charles, for being flexible. We're going to get done in plenty of time for us to watch the celebration tonight.
So I did okay? All right.
You did awesome. And listeners, thank you so much. If you get a chance, please go to iTunes, rate and review us. Anywhere where you get a podcast. We would love the reviews. And Charles, I'm looking forward to talking Daleks with you and Zan next week.
Yeah, this should be a great time. Everybody, come on back. You want to listen to this because if nothing else, listen for Zan because she's the greatest.
She is.
Yeah. I know you're sick of Jesse and me, but you got to come back for Zan, right?
Absolutely.
So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, wake the kids, and feed the dog, and then come on back for episode 216, Resurrection of the Daleks with Zan Sprouse, right here on Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.